Karen Anderson lived a quiet, predictable life in her cozy suburban home. Her days followed a routine that rarely changed. Every morning, she woke up at exactly 6:30 a.m., brewed a strong cup of coffee, and sat by the window with her laptop to start her workday as an insurance adjuster. She loved the orderliness of her life, the way everything seemed to fit neatly into place. Her house was always spotless, her garden perfectly manicured, and her schedule meticulously planned. To Karen, control over her environment was key to happiness. Her current landlords, an elderly white couple named the Harrisons, had owned the property for years. They were pleasant enough but mostly kept to themselves, which suited Karen just fine. The Harrisons rarely visited, leaving Karen free to manage her space without interference. This arrangement worked well until recently, when whispers about the neighborhood began circulating. People mentioned seeing real estate agents touring homes nearby, and rumors spread that several properties, including Karen's, might be sold. At first, Karen dismissed these stories as gossip, but deep down, they planted seeds of unease. Change wasn't something she welcomed easily. One sunny afternoon, while tending to her flower beds, Karen heard the rumble of a truck pulling up outside her house. She glanced up curiously, expecting perhaps a delivery or one of her neighbors returning from errands. Instead, she saw a moving van parked near her driveway. Out stepped a tall black man wearing sturdy work boots and carrying a toolbox. He looked confident and purposeful, scanning the area before heading toward her front door. Karen straightened up, brushing dirt off her hands, and watched him closely. The man noticed her standing there and walked over with a friendly smile. "Hi," he said warmly, extending his hand. "I'm Marcus Johnson. I'm here to change the locks. It's part of the new security measures we're implementing." Karen hesitated, her mind racing. New security measures. No one had told her anything about this. And who exactly was this man claiming to have authority over her home? She forced a polite smile, but didn't shake his hand. "Oh, really?" she replied coolly, trying to mask her growing suspicion. "I wasn't informed about any changes. Are you with the Harrisons?" Marcus shook his head. "No, ma'am. The Harrisons sold the property last month. I'm the new owner." Karen's heart skipped a beat. Owner? That couldn't be right. Surely, she would have received some kind of notice if the house had changed hands. She studied him carefully, searching for signs that he might be lying. But Marcus seemed calm and genuine, exuding an air of professionalism that made her doubt herself for a moment. As Marcus turned back to unload his tools, Karen retreated to her garden, her thoughts swirling. Something about this situation felt off. Why hadn't she been notified? Who was this man, really? And why did he look so comfortable taking charge of what she considered asterisk or asterisk space? Determined to get answers, Karen grabbed her phone and snapped photos of the van, its license plate, and even Marcus himself as he worked. If nothing else, she wanted proof, just in case things took a turn for the worse. Little did she know, this encounter would spiral far beyond anything she could have imagined. After Marcus finished installing the new locks, Karen retreated into her house, her mind buzzing with unanswered questions. She paced back and forth in her living room, replaying the conversation in her head. The man, Marcus, seemed polite enough, but something about the situation didn't sit right with her. How could someone just show up at her house and start making changes without warning? It felt like an invasion of her personal space, a disruption to the carefully controlled life she had built for herself. Karen decided to call her closest friends, hoping they could help make sense of what had happened. First, she dialed Lisa, who lived 2 streets over. "You won't believe this," Karen began, her voice tinged with frustration. "Some guy showed up today saying he's the new owner of my house. He even changed the locks. Can you imagine?" Lisa listened intently before chiming in. "Wait, what? Did he show you any proof, like documents or something?" "Well, no," Karen admitted hesitantly. "But he acted so sure of himself. And his truck, it looked professional, I guess. Still, don't you think it's weird?" What if he's lying? What if he's trying to pull some kind of scam? Lisa's tone grew more serious. That does sound suspicious. You should be careful, Karen. Maybe take pictures of his van or write down his license plate number, just in case. Encouraged by Lisa's advice, Karen called another friend, Diane, who was known for her knack for spotting trouble. When Karen recounted the story, Diane immediately jumped to conclusions. Oh my goodness, Karen, this sounds bad. What if he's part of some squatter scheme? Or worse, what if he's planning to steal your identity? These things happen all the time. Karen's unease deepened with each word. Squatters. Identity theft. She hadn't considered those possibilities, but now they seemed terrifyingly plausible. Her imagination ran wild as she pictured shadowy figures lurking around her neighborhood, plotting to take over homes under false pretenses. By the time she hung up with Diane, Karen was convinced that Marcus posed a real threat, not just to her property, but to her safety. Determined to protect herself, Karen opened her laptop and began searching online for information. She typed phrases like how to spot a rental scam and what to do if someone claims to own your house. Every article she read only heightened her anxiety. One website warned about con artists posing as landlords to gain access to people's homes. Another described how scammers used fake documents to trick unsuspecting tenants. Each headline reinforced Karen's growing conviction that Marcus wasn't who he claimed to be. As evening fell, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to act quickly. She decided to file a police report just to cover her bases. Picking up her phone, she dialed the non-emergency line and explained the situation in a shaky voice. I think someone's impersonating a landlord, she told the officer on the other end. He came to my house today and changed the locks. I don't know what to do. The officer assured her they would look into it and advised her to gather evidence in the meantime. Feeling slightly reassured, Karen went to bed, but sleep eluded her. Scenes from the day kept replaying in her mind. Marcus's calm demeanor, the gleam of his tools, the way he confidently introduced himself as the new owner. Was he really a criminal mastermind, or was there a simpler explanation she was missing? The next morning, Karen woke up with a plan. She would confront Marcus directly and demand answers. If he couldn't provide proof of ownership, she wouldn't hesitate to involve the authorities again. Armed with her phone to record the interaction, Karen marched outside, ready to face him head-on. But little did she know, this confrontation would spiral out of control in ways she never anticipated. The next morning, Karen woke up feeling a mix of determination and unease. She had spent hours rehearsing what she would say to Marcus, preparing herself for any response he might throw her way. Her plan was simple: demand proof of ownership and record the entire conversation as evidence, just in case things went south. Armed with her phone and a steely resolve, she stepped outside, ready to confront him. As luck would have it, Marcus arrived shortly after she did, pulling up in the same van from the day before. He climbed out, carrying his toolbox, and greeted her with a polite smile. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I'm just here to finish up the lock changes." Karen crossed her arms over her chest, her expression hardening. "Hold on a second," she snapped, holding up her phone like a shield. "Before you do anything else, I want answers. Who exactly are you? And why should I believe you own this house?" Marcus blinked, momentarily taken aback by her tone, but quickly regained his composure. "I already told you yesterday. I'm Marcus Johnson, the new owner of this property. The Harrisons sold it last month." His voice remained calm, almost soothing, which only seemed to irritate Karen further. "That's not good enough." Karen shot back, her voice rising. "If you're really the owner, then where's your proof? Show me something, anything, that proves you're telling the truth." Marcus sighed, clearly sensing that this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. He set his toolbox down and reached into his bag, pulling out a folder filled with documents. "Here," he said, handing them to her. "These are the legal papers showing the transfer of ownership. You can look through them if you'd like." But Karen barely glanced at the folder. Instead, she focused on Marcus himself, scrutinizing every detail about him. The color of his skin, the confidence in his posture, the way he spoke so matter-of-factly. In her mind, none of it added up. Why would someone like him buy a house in her neighborhood? Weren't landlords supposed to be older, wealthier, whiter? These thoughts swirled in her head, fueling her skepticism even more. "I don't trust this," Karen muttered, shaking her head. "This whole thing feels off. How do I know these aren't fake? For all I know, you could have made them yourself." Marcus frowned, his patience starting to wear thin. "Ma'am, I understand you're concerned, but accusing me of forgery isn't fair. I followed all the proper legal channels when I bought this property. If you're still unsure, feel free to contact the real estate agency or the county clerk's office. They'll confirm everything." By now, their heated exchange had drawn the attention of several neighbors. A small crowd began gathering across the street, whispering among themselves as they watched the scene unfold. Some looked sympathetic toward Karen, while others exchanged knowing glances, silently disapproving of her behavior. One neighbor even pulled out a phone to record the confrontation, though Karen didn't notice. "You expect me to just take your word for it?" Karen retorted, her voice growing louder with each passing second. "How am I supposed to know you're not trying to pull some kind of scam? People like you always think they can get away with things." Her words hung in the air, sharp and loaded. Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly catching the implication behind her phrasing. For a moment, he simply stared at her, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. Then, without raising his voice, he replied, "People like me? What exactly does that mean?" Karen faltered, realizing too late how her comment might sound. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "You know what I mean. This whole situation is suspicious, and until I see real proof, I'm not letting you near my house again." Marcus exhaled deeply, shaking his head. "Fine," he said firmly. "Do whatever you need to do, but let me remind you, this isn't personal. I'm just doing my job as the rightful owner of this property. If you continue to act like this, you're only making things harder for yourself." With that, he picked up his toolbox and walked back to his van, leaving Karen standing there fuming. As he drove away, she realized too late that her actions might have consequences far beyond this moment. Unbeknownst to her, the video of their argument was already spreading online, turning what should have been a simple misunderstanding into something much bigger and far more public. After Marcus drove away, Karen stormed back inside her house, slamming the door behind her. Her heart was racing, and her hands trembled as she replayed the confrontation in her mind. She had been so sure of herself during the argument, convinced that Marcus was hiding something or trying to deceive her. But now, doubt began creeping in. What if he really was telling the truth? What if those documents he'd handed her were legitimate after all? Determined to get answers, Karen sat down at her dining table and opened the folder Marcus had given her. Inside were copies of official-looking papers, a deed transfer form, a purchase agreement signed by the Harrisons, and correspondence from the county clerk's office confirming the sale. At first glance, everything seemed legitimate, but Karen still couldn't shake her skepticism. She decided to call the real estate agency listed on one of the documents. The phone rang several times before a cheerful voice answered. "Good morning, Crestwood Realty. How can I assist you?" Karen cleared her throat, trying to sound calm and professional. "Hi, yes, I'm calling about a property located at 1428 Maple Lane. I live there, and apparently it's been sold. Can you verify who the current owner is?" "Of course," the agent replied. After a brief pause while they checked their records, the voice returned. "Yes, that property was purchased last month by Mr. Marcus Johnson. Everything went through legally, and the transaction has been finalized." Karen felt her stomach drop. The confirmation hit her like a ton of bricks. Marcus wasn't lying. He really was her new landlord. her face flushed with embarrassment as she mumbled a quick thank you and hung up the phone. For a moment, she just sat there, staring blankly at the wall, overwhelmed by guilt and shame. But her problems weren't over yet. By the time she stepped outside again, she noticed something strange happening across the street. A group of neighbors stood huddled together, scrolling through their phones and occasionally glancing toward her house. One of them waved awkwardly when they saw her, but most avoided making eye contact. Confused, Karen pulled out her own phone to check social media. And that's when she saw it. A video of her argument with Marcus had gone viral overnight. Someone had recorded the entire exchange without her realizing it, capturing every word she said, including her racially charged comment about people like you. The caption read, "Local woman accuses new landlord of fraud. Then things get ugly." Comments poured in from strangers across the internet, many criticizing her behavior and praising Marcus for staying calm under pressure. Karen scrolled through the thread, her chest tightening with each passing second. Some comments called her entitled and prejudiced, while others suggested she deserved to be evicted. Even local news outlets had picked up the story, turning what started as a private disagreement into a public spectacle. Panic set in as Karen realized how much damage this could do, not just to her reputation, but to her career as well. Later that evening, Karen received an email from her boss requesting an urgent meeting. It didn't take long for her to connect the dots. Someone must have flagged the viral video to HR. As she typed out a response agreeing to meet the next day, tears welled up in her eyes. All she wanted was to turn back time and undo the events of the past 48 hours. Why hadn't she listened to Marcus when he tried to explain? Why had she let her assumptions spiral so far out of control? That night, unable to sleep, Karen found herself thinking about Marcus. Despite her accusations and hostility, he had remained composed throughout the ordeal. He hadn't yelled, insulted her, or retaliated in any way. If anything, he had shown remarkable patience and professionalism, qualities she wished she had demonstrated herself. For the first time since the incident, Karen allowed herself to consider the possibility that she might have been wrong not just about Marcus, but about a lot of things. As dawn broke the next morning, Karen made a decision. She would reach out to Marcus, apologize sincerely, and try to make amends. Whether he accepted her apology or not, she knew she owed it to him, and to herself, to take responsibility for her actions. Little did she know, this conversation would mark the beginning of a journey toward understanding, accountability, and perhaps even redemption. By the time Karen woke up the next morning, her world had already begun to change in ways she couldn't fully comprehend yet. The viral video of her confrontation with Marcus had taken on a life of its own, spreading across social media platforms like wildfire. Overnight, hashtags like #Karen'sLandlord and #AccountabilityMatters began trending, drawing thousands of comments from people all over the country. Some viewers criticized Karen's aggressive tone and accusatory language, while others expressed sympathy for Marcus, praising him for handling the situation with grace under pressure. Karen scrolled through the posts, her stomach twisting into knots as she read comment after comment dissecting her behavior. One user wrote, "This is exactly why we need more education about racial bias." Another added, "She's lucky he didn't press charges. This could have gone so much worse." Even local news outlets picked up the story, running segments that included interviews with neighbors who described Karen as entitled and out of touch. Watching clips of herself on television, red-faced and shouting, was surreal and deeply humiliating. But the backlash didn't stop there. Her employer, alerted by concerned clients and colleagues, called an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Sitting in the conference room, Karen felt smaller than ever as her boss addressed the issue head-on. "We've received complaints about your conduct outside of work," they said firmly. "While this incident didn't happen during company hours, it reflects poorly on our organization. We expect professionalism both inside and outside the office." Karen nodded numbly, tears welling up in her eyes. She tried to explain, stammering out fragments of an apology, but her words felt hollow even to her own ears. Her boss gave her a stern warning. If anything like this happened again, disciplinary action would follow. As she left the meeting, Karen knew she had narrowly avoided losing her job, but the damage to her reputation was undeniable. Back at home, Karen struggled to face her neighbors. Every glance or whisper made her feel exposed, as though everyone was silently judging her. Some residents avoided her altogether, crossing the street when they saw her coming. Others confronted her directly, expressing disappointment or anger over how she had treated Marcus. A few even suggested she move out, claiming her presence tarnished the neighborhood's sense of community. It was clear that trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired. Amidst the chaos, Marcus remained quiet. He didn't fuel the fire online or join in the public criticism. Instead, he focused on managing his properties and getting to know his tenants. When reporters reached out to him for statements, he politely declined, saying only that he hoped the situation would lead to positive growth for everyone involved. His restraint earned him even more admiration from those following the story, further highlighting the contrast between his composure and Karen's explosive reaction. For Karen, the weight of the backlash became unbearable. She stopped going out unless absolutely necessary, deleted her social media accounts, and spent most of her days alone in her house. The isolation gave her plenty of time to reflect on what had happened and how quickly things had spiraled out of control. At first, she blamed Marcus for not explaining himself sooner, or the neighbor who recorded the video, or even the internet for amplifying the drama. But as the days passed, she realized the common thread running through every accusation, every insult, every judgment. It all pointed back to her. One night, sitting alone in her dimly lit living room, Karen broke down in tears. She replayed the confrontation in her mind, hearing the sharpness in her own voice and seeing the hurt in Marcus's eyes. For the first time, she truly understood the impact of her words, not just on him, but on everyone watching. Her assumptions, fueled by fear and prejudice, had caused real harm, and now she was paying the price. As painful as it was, Karen also recognized that this moment offered her a choice. She could retreat further into shame and self-pity, or she could use it as an opportunity to change, for real. That realization planted the seed of hope within her. If she was willing to take responsibility for her actions and make amends, perhaps she could find a way forward. But one thing was certain: rebuilding trust wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight. When Karen reached out to Marcus a few days later, she wasn't sure what to expect. She had rehearsed her apology countless times in front of the mirror, carefully choosing her words to sound sincere without being defensive. But no matter how much she practiced, the thought of facing him filled her with dread. What if he refused to listen? What if he decided to evict her on the spot? These fears gnawed at her as she sent him a text message asking for a meeting. To her relief, Marcus agreed. He suggested they meet at a small cafe near the neighborhood park, a neutral location where they could talk privately. When Karen arrived, she spotted him sitting at a corner table, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure whether she was ready for this conversation. But then Marcus looked up, saw her standing there, and gave her a polite nod. Summoning every ounce of courage, Karen walked over and sat down across from him. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice trembling slightly. I wanted to apologize for my behavior the other day. It was wrong of me to accuse you like that, and I regret everything I said." Marcus studied her face for a long moment before responding. His expression wasn't angry or judgmental. It was thoughtful, almost curious. "Apology accepted," he said finally. "But I'd like to understand why you reacted the way you did. Was it really just about the locks?" Karen sighed, feeling the weight of his questions settle over her. She knew she couldn't dodge the truth anymore. "No, it wasn't," she admitted softly. "When I saw you, I made assumptions about who you were, why you were here, What kind of person buys a house in this neighborhood? And those assumptions weren't fair. They came from, well, ignorance, I guess. I'm not proud of it. Marcus nodded slowly, his gaze steady but not unkind. It's easy to make assumptions based on appearances, he said. But when we let stereotypes guide our actions, it can hurt people, even if we don't mean to. I've dealt with that kind of thing my whole life. His words hit Karen like a punch to the gut. She hadn't considered how her comments might have affected him personally, beyond the inconvenience of their argument. Now, hearing him speak so openly about his experiences, she felt even more ashamed of herself. I never meant to offend you, she said earnestly, and I realize now that saying, I'm sorry isn't enough. I need to do better, to learn, to grow, to be more mindful of how my actions impact others. Marcus smiled faintly, a hint of approval flickering in his eyes. That's a good start, he said. Growth doesn't happen overnight, but it's worth pursuing. If you're serious about learning, maybe consider joining some workshops or community groups focused on diversity and inclusion. There are plenty around here. Karen nodded eagerly, grateful for his suggestion. I will, she promised, and I'll also make an effort to get to know my neighbors better, including you. Honestly, after everything that's happened, I feel like I owe it to everyone to be more involved. The two of you talked for nearly an hour, covering topics ranging from property management to local events. By the end of the conversation, Karen felt lighter, as though a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. Marcus, too, seemed pleased with how things had gone. Before parting ways, he handed her a copy of the lease agreement. Let's move forward, he said simply, on better terms. As Karen walked home, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come in such a short time. The past week had been one of the most humbling experiences of her life, forcing her to confront her biases and take responsibility for her mistakes. Yet it had also given her a chance to change, to become someone who approached the world with more empathy and understanding. For the first time in days, Karen allowed herself to feel hopeful. She didn't know what the future held, but she was determined to face it with honesty and grace. In the weeks that followed her meeting with Marcus, Karen threw herself into making meaningful changes. She started by attending a local diversity workshop held at the community center. At first, she felt out of place among the diverse group of attendees, many of whom seemed well-versed in discussions about race and inclusion. But as the sessions progressed, Karen found herself opening up, sharing her story, how her assumptions had led to conflict, and what she was doing to grow from the experience. To her surprise, people were receptive, offering words of encouragement rather than judgment. The workshops introduced Karen to new perspectives she'd never considered before. She learned about systemic inequalities, microaggressions, and the importance of listening to others' experiences without becoming defensive. One session particularly struck her, a panel discussion featuring residents who had faced discrimination in their daily lives. Hearing their stories firsthand made her realize how deeply prejudice could affect people, even in subtle ways she might not have noticed before. Back in her neighborhood, Karen began reaching out to her neighbors more intentionally. She introduced herself to families she'd barely spoken to in years, invited them over for coffee, and asked about their lives. Slowly but surely, relationships that had once been distant or strained began to thaw. Some neighbors remained cautious, unsure if Karen's efforts were genuine, while others welcomed her attempts to connect. Either way, Karen kept showing up, determined to prove that she was committed to change. Her relationship with Marcus also improved over time. He remained professional but noticeably warmer during their interactions. When plumbing issues arose in her house, Marcus responded promptly, going above and beyond to ensure everything was fixed properly. In return, Karen paid her rent on time and took extra care to maintain the property, knowing it mattered to him as a landlord. Their conversations grew less formal, often touching on shared interests like gardening or local events. Though they weren't friends exactly, there was mutual respect between them, a foundation both valued. Word of Karen's transformation spread through the neighborhood. Neighbors who had initially dismissed her as that woman began acknowledging her efforts. Lisa and Diane, her close friends, noticed the shift too. They teased her good-naturedly about her newfound passion for community involvement. But deep down, they were proud of her. Even online, the backlash against her viral moment softened as people saw tangible proof of her growth. A few commenters even posted updates, praising her willingness to learn and improve. For Marcus, managing the property became easier as he built stronger connections with his tenants, including Karen. He appreciated her transparency and effort, recognizing that real change takes time and commitment. More importantly, he saw her journey as a reminder of something he'd always believed. Everyone deserves a chance to grow, even when they stumble. As months passed, Karen found joy in her evolving role within the community. She joined a neighborhood cleanup initiative, volunteered at a local food drive, and attended cultural festivals she previously overlooked. These activities enriched her life in ways she hadn't anticipated, broadening her worldview and deepening her appreciation for the diversity around her. No longer did she view differences as obstacles. Instead, she embraced them as opportunities to learn and connect. Looking back on the ordeal, Karen realized it had been a turning point, not just for her personally, but for the entire neighborhood. The incident had sparked difficult conversations about bias and privilege, pushing people to reflect on their own behaviors. While some wounds healed slowly, others left lasting scars. But progress was undeniable. One crisp autumn afternoon, Karen stood in her garden, admiring the vibrant colors of the season. As she watched children playing across the street and neighbors chatting over fences, she felt a profound sense of belonging. This was her home now, not just the house, but the community. And though she knew she still had much to learn, she was grateful for the second chance she'd been given. Sometimes, life teaches its hardest lessons in unexpected ways. And sometimes, those lessons lead to beautiful beginnings.